Mist clung to the quiet village of Tsukimura, a place where time flowed as gently as the river that wound through its heart. The villagers rose with the sun and slept beneath the hush of the mountains, their lives untouched by the restless modern world beyond. But deep within this village, in a small wooden home nestled beneath the boughs of a centuries-old sakura tree, lived an elderly woman whose hands could shape the future. Oba-san, as she was known to all, spent her days folding delicate origami, birds, flowers, foxes. With each crease and careful press of her fingers, whispers of fate wove themselves into the paper. The villagers had long learned to heed her work. When she folded a carp, a bountiful fishing season followed. When she crafted a butterfly, a child was soon born. And when she shaped a crow, heads bowed in mourning before news of a passing even arrived. Chiyo, a sprightly girl of 8, often sat cross-legged before Oba-san, watching in wide-eyed wonder. She had tried her hand at origami many times, her fingers clumsy but determined. "One day your hands will know the way," Oba-san always told her with a gentle smile. That morning, as the cicadas hummed and the village stirred to life, Chiyo picked up a crisp square of paper, red like the sunrise. She smoothed it carefully just as Oba-san had taught her and began folding. One crease then another. The paper shifted, reshaping itself beneath her small hands. Soon, a crane took form, its wings sharp, its beak pointed toward the sky. Pleased with herself, Chiyo grinned. But as she lifted the crane to admire it, her breath caught. The paper moved. Not with the faint tremor of unsteady hands, nor the gentle sigh of a summer breeze. The crane shuddered, its wings twitching as if alive. Then all at once, its beak dipped forward and black ink bloomed across its body, spreading like spilled ink in water. Chiyo gasped as the ink darkened, shifting into shapes, twisting trees, curling smoke, a sky swallowed by flames. Shadows loomed, taking the shape of creatures she did not recognize. Their eyes gleamed from the paper, and the air around her grew heavy, as though unseen hands pressed against her chest. Oba-san, who had been watching from the corner of the room, hurried forward. With practiced fingers, she plucked the crane from Chiyo's hands, eyes narrowing at the vision unraveling before them. The elderly woman had seen many things in her years. Visions of harvests, of misfortune, of love and loss. But never before had she seen this. A railway. A train. Darkness pouring from its doors. Her fingers trembled. Chiyo looked up at her, frightened. "Oba-san, what does it mean?" The old woman did not answer at first. She placed the paper crane on the table, its ink-stained body resting between them. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sound of temple bells. Then, with a voice softer than the rustling wind, Oba-san whispered, "A storm is coming."
The village elder listened with a furrowed brow as Oba-san recounted what she had seen. They sat beneath the eaves of the village shrine, where the wooden pillars bore the weight of centuries, and incense coiled into the air like ghostly serpents. A handful of villagers gathered nearby, drawn by the murmurs of an ill omen. The child's hands gave shape to a prophecy. Oba-san finished, her voice grave. "Something is coming to Tsukimura." The elder, a man whose hair had turned silver with the years, exhaled slowly. "Your origami has never spoken falsely," he admitted. "But a train? That is the work of men, not spirits. What does it have to do with us?" One of the villagers, a merchant who had recently traveled beyond the mountains, spoke up hesitantly. "The railway. The one connecting the sacred sites across the country. It is nearly complete." Oba-san closed her eyes. A railway running through places of worship, disturbing the ancient sites where spirits had rested for centuries. It was not simply the work of men. It was an interruption of fate. And fate, once disturbed, always demanded a reckoning. She opened her eyes. "We must prepare." Some scoffed, shaking their heads. Others exchanged uneasy glances. The younger ones, who had never witnessed the old ways in action, dismissed it as superstition. A train was a train, a marvel of progress. What fear was there in that? But deep in her bones, Oba-san knew the truth. The paper crane had spoken. And soon the train would arrive.
The low hum of the train was a familiar comfort. The rhythmic clatter of steel wheels against the tracks, the gentle sway of the carriage, it all felt as steady and predictable as breathing. For Hiroshi, the railway was his world. He stood at the front of the train, one gloved hand resting lightly on the control panel. Outside, the mountains stretched wide beneath the afternoon sun, their peaks brushing against clouds as though whispering secrets to the sky. This was the inaugural journey of the Midnight Crane, a train meant to unite Japan's most sacred sites. Pilgrims and tourists alike filled the carriages, their voices blending into a quiet murmur behind him. A train that connected shrines should have been a blessing. Yet something sat heavy in Hiroshi's chest. He touched the inside of his uniform, fingers brushing against the charm tied with red string, a gift from his wife Ayaka. "This will keep you safe," she had said that morning, pressing it into his palm. He had laughed at her seriousness, but she had not smiled in return. Now, as the train curved around the mountainside, a strange unease settled over him. Then the air shifted. The warmth of the sun vanished, swallowed by an unnatural chill. The sky, so bright moments ago, darkened, not with clouds but with something unseen, something ancient. A pressure built around them as if the train had passed through an invisible wall. And then Hiroshi saw it. Beyond the tracks, nestled between the trees, stood a crumbling torii gate, its wood blackened with age, its sacred ropes frayed and broken. Beyond it, a shrine forgotten and devoured by the forest, its walls cracked with time. The railway had cut through this land, defiled it. A terrible weight filled the air. The train lurched. The lights flickered. And then, the first scream.
The scream came from the second carriage. Hiroshi turned sharply, his heart slamming against his ribs. More screams followed, rising like a wail of the damned. He rushed down the aisle, his breath quick and unsteady. His passengers, his people, were writhing, clutching at their faces, their bodies convulsing. Skin stretched, bones cracked. Shadows slithered across the carriage walls, flickering like candlelight. A woman clutched her throat, gasping for air as her fingers darkened, lengthened, claws where nails should be. Her eyes burned like embers. A man doubled over, his back arching as something inhuman pushed against his skin. One by one the passengers became something else. Not spirits from ancient folklore. These were fresh, twisted, born from human fear and suffering. A chill raced through Hiroshi as he stumbled backward. His pulse pounded in his ears. The air thickened, the very walls of the train trembling as though something unseen was pressing in from the outside. And yet he remained untouched. A hand clutched at his chest. The red string felt hot against his skin, a warmth that pulsed against the rising darkness. Ayaka's voice echoed in his mind. "This will keep you safe." But for how long? The train jolted again as if something massive had taken hold of it. The shriek of metal against metal filled the air, and outside the shrine disappeared into the shadows. The train wasn't stopping. It was moving forward, deeper into the curse. Hiroshi turned, his breath ragged. The creatures, his passengers, lifted their heads, their eyes no longer human. They were staring at him now. And they were hungry. Ayaka lived in quiet. Her days were spent tending the village shrine, sweeping fallen petals from the stone steps, and offering prayers beneath the ancient camphor tree. The villagers knew her as Hiroshi's devoted wife, a kind woman with a soft voice and an ever-present smile. But she had lived far longer than they imagined. Long ago, before she had chosen this quiet life, before she had fallen in love with a human, she had been something else. A creature of twilight, a whisper of silver in the wind. A kitsune with 9 tails that shimmered beneath the moon and fire that danced at her fingertips. For centuries she had hidden. The yokai lords, the cruel and powerful spirits who ruled the unseen world, had hunted her, seeking the celestial flames that burned within her soul. To be found was to be enslaved, or destroyed. So she had vanished. She had severed her past like a fox slipping free of a hunter's snare, buried her magic beneath human skin, and built a life where no one would find her. And for a time she had been happy. But happiness was fleeting. And on this night, beneath a sky choked with storm clouds, the past had finally caught up with her.
The wind carried the scent of smoke and fear. Ayaka stood at the edge of the village, her heart pounding as she stared down the railway tracks. The trees swayed violently, their branches twisting as if recoiling from an unseen force. Then, in the distance, the sound of a train whistle. Oh, hello. Wrong. The air crackled with something ancient, something hungry. A second later, the train emerged from the darkness. The midnight crane, its once pristine exterior now rusted and blackened, as though it had aged 100 years in a single night. Lanterns flickered along its body, casting eerie shadows, and the windows were moving. No, not moving. Something was pressing against them. The train shuddered to a stop at the station. The doors creaked open, and the yokai poured out. They spilled into the village, ghastly, shifting figures, their bodies twisted and wrong. Some crawled, their limbs too long, their mouths gaping wide. Others hovered inches above the ground, whispering in voices that scraped against the air like brittle leaves. The villagers screamed. A man fell as a shadow lunged at him, his body convulsing as his skin darkened, stretching over new inhuman bones. A woman clutched her child, trying to run, only for a clawed hand to seize her shoulder, pulling her back. The curse was spreading. Ayaka's breath hitched. Her hands clenched into fists, and then she saw him. Hiroshi. He stood at the train's entrance, untouched, his uniform torn, his face pale. The charm she had given him still clung to his chest, its red string frayed but holding. For now, the sight of him shattered the last of her hesitation. She could run. She could hide. She could try to be human for a little longer. Or she could fight. Ayaka exhaled slowly. Then she stepped forward. The air shifted. A soft glow rose from her skin, flickering at first, then brightening, pale blue fire licking at the edges of her form. Her hair, once dark, began to lighten, silver creeping through like moonlight spilling across a midnight sky. And behind her, tails. Not one. Not two. 9. They fanned out, spectral and radiant, their tips burning with celestial fire. The earth trembled beneath her feet. The yokai turned, sensing something greater than themselves, their twisted faces drawn to the sudden light. A hush fell over the chaos. Then Ayaka moved. With a flick of her wrist, the flames surged outward, swallowing the nearest yokai in a burst of blue fire. They screamed, not in agony but in recognition. They knew her. And worse, so did something else. Far beyond the village, beyond the mountains and the forests, in the unseen corners of the world where yokai lords slumbered, something stirred. A voice, cold and ancient, whispered through the wind. Found you. Ayaka's worst fear had come true. She had revealed herself. And now they were coming. Flames crackled. Shadows twisted. The air was thick with screams. The village was no longer a place of peace. It was a battlefield. Tengu soared through the smoke-filled sky, their black wings spread wide as they dived upon fleeing villagers, their talons gleaming like sharpened blades. Oni, massive and horned, tore through wooden homes as though they were paper. A woman shrieked as a vengeful spirit, its face frozen in eternal agony, wrapped spectral hands around her throat, dragging her toward the abyss. And in the center of it all, Ayaka fought. Her celestial flames illuminated the night, each flicker of blue fire carving through the darkness. A yokai lunged at her, a creature with too many eyes and a mouth that stretched far too wide. She twisted, her tails lashing out, sending it flying into the burning wreckage of a house. But for every yokai she struck down, more emerged from the shadows. She couldn't keep up. Not alone. Not while Hiroshi was still trapped on that cursed train.
Inside Obasan's home, Chiyo trembled. The old woman had pulled her into the tiny storage room beneath the floorboards, their only sanctuary from the chaos outside. But Chiyo wasn't afraid of the yokai. She was afraid of what she was seeing. In her hands, the paper crane she had folded the night before fluttered. Its wings twitched like a living thing and then it moved. Shapes unfolded before her eyes. Scenes, memories, glimpses of a past she had never known. A temple hidden deep within the mountains where a white fox stood beneath the full moon. Her fur shimmered like stardust, her 9 tails spread behind her in a halo of light. But she was not alone. A shadow loomed over her, monstrous and ancient. Chiyo's breath caught. She had seen that shape before, in the village scrolls, in whispered legends. The yokai lords, Obasan murmured beside her, staring wide-eyed at the shifting origami. They have been hunting Ayaka for centuries. And now they know where she is.
Hiroshi gritted his teeth as the train bucked violently beneath him. The controls were dead. The cursed locomotive was no longer something he could steer, it had become something else. The air inside the train was suffocating. The walls pulsed as if they were breathing, and the passengers turned yokai howled, clawing at him. But the charm around his neck still burned warm, shielding him from the full effects of the curse. If he could just force the train to move again. If he could somehow send it back, seal the yokai inside. A deafening roar outside made him glance through the shattered window. In the distance, Ayaka stood surrounded. Her flames flickered, weakening. And then Hiroshi saw the village elder. The old man limped forward, clutching a wooden staff, his wrinkled face set with quiet determination. Ayaka, he called, his voice barely audible above the carnage. You must leave. She turned to him, eyes wide with protest. I can still. Understand? The elder planted his staff into the ground, a tremor running through the earth. A faint glow spread beneath his feet, the remnants of an ancient ward. His final gift to the village. I will buy you time. But you must save Hiroshi and go. Ayaka's eyes burned. I won't leave you too. You must. A pulse of energy erupted from the elder, a golden barrier slamming into the nearest yokai, pushing them back. But Ayaka could see it, the price he was paying. The magic was draining him. This was his farewell. Tears blurred her vision. She could stay. She could fight to the last breath. Or she could save Hiroshi. And live to finish this fight. Her fists clenched. Then, without another word, she turned toward the train.
The flames had died down, but the scent of burning wood and fear still clung to the air. Ayaka stood amidst the wreckage of the village, her breath uneven. Her celestial flames had driven the remaining yokai back into the train, sealing them once more within its cursed walls. The train howled like a wounded beast, its doors slamming shut as if rejecting its own prisoners. Then, with a ghostly wail, it began to move, dragging its monstrous cargo away from the village. But this was not victory, as she could feel them. More were coming.
Chiyo clutched a fresh paper crane in her trembling hands. Its wings shuddered, twitched, and then, it moved. Not like before. Not just a simple flutter. It thrashed violently. A sudden gust of wind burst through the broken house, scattering paper talismans, toppling wooden shelves. The origami unfolded itself unnaturally, twisting into jagged shapes, like clawed hands reaching from the abyss. Chiyo's breath caught as a vision erupted before her eyes. A vast moonlit field. Shadows moving like a tide. Eyes glinting in the darkness. A whisper slithering through her mind, she is here. And then, a presence. Something monstrous. Ancient. Closing in. The crane crumpled in her hands. Ayaka. Chiyo gasped, stumbling forward. They're coming. They know you're here. Ayaka turned, eyes narrowing. She didn't need the vision to know it was true. The ground beneath them shivered. The wind shifted. In the distance, beyond the scorched trees, the faint glow of something unnatural flickered in the night. Not fire. Us. Watching. Waiting. We have to leave, Ayaka whispered. Now.
Hiroshi clenched his fists. No. Ayaka turned to him, golden eyes flashing. Hiroshi, you don't understand. If I stay, the entire village will. I don't care, he cut her off. His voice was hoarse, raw. His uniform was torn, smeared with soot, the protective charm around his neck still faintly glowing. He had nearly died tonight. But none of that mattered. Because he wasn't about to lose Ayaka. You think I'd let you go alone? He asked. Not after all this? Ayaka exhaled sharply, looking away. She wanted to tell him no. She wanted to say that the journey ahead was hers alone. But she couldn't. Not when she had fought so hard to protect him. And then, before she could argue, another voice spoke up. I'm coming too. Both of them turned to Chiyo. The girl stood tall, fists clenched around her last surviving paper crane. Chiyo, Oba-san began, but the girl shook her head. I have to. The spirit inside me. It's leading me somewhere. It's showing me something important. She hesitated before adding, if I stay, the visions won't stop. They'll keep coming and I won't be able to help anyone. Ayaka studied her for a long moment. Then finally she sighed. All right. She turned to Hiroshi, her expression softening. All right. And with that, they left the village behind.
Behind them, in the forest depths, something shifted. A pair of eyes blinked open in the darkness. A low, guttural chuckle rumbled through the night air. Run, little fox. We will find you. And the hunt began. The wind carried whispers. Not of the present, but of the past. Ayaka stood at the base of the mountain shrine, the scent of damp earth and pine thick in the air. Above her, a torii gate, ancient and weathered by time, stood half buried in ivy. The red paint had faded, but the power within the wood remained. This was the first shrine, and it was awakening. She could feel the celestial energy thrumming beneath her skin. It called to her, recognizing what she was, what she had once been. But she hesitated, because with every step forward, she felt the weight of her past pressing heavier on her shoulders. I should have done this long ago, she murmured. Beside her, Hiroshi watched her quietly. He didn't speak, didn't push her to move. He simply waited. It was Chiyo who finally broke the silence. It's okay to be afraid, she said softly. Her hands cupped a small paper fox, its fragile form shifting in the breeze. But we don't have much time. Ayaka exhaled. Then finally she stepped forward.
The shrine's presence welcomed her. As Ayaka crossed the threshold, the air shimmered, like heat rising from stone. A faint hum filled her ears, a melody without sound, ancient and knowing. Then from the shrine's depths, something stirred. A fox spirit, its fur silver as moonlight, emerged from the shadows. Its many tails flickered like mist, its golden eyes warm yet unreadable. "You have returned, child of the stars," it whispered. Ayaka knelt. "I seek strength." The spirit studied her. Then with a flick of its tail the shrine came to life. The trees trembled. The wind sang. And Ayaka felt the surge of power rushing into her. It was overwhelming. Memories she had long buried surfaced. Faces she had lost, choices she regretted. The celestial flame within her flickered, rising higher, brighter. And then just as suddenly the power settled. She gasped, steadying herself. Something had changed. "You are not the same as before," the fox spirit murmured. "But neither are you lost." Then with a final nod, it faded into the shrine's light. The first trial was complete.
Their journey continued. Guided by Chiyo's paper cranes, they traveled through misty forests, across rivers shrouded in fog, and into valleys untouched by time. Each shrine was different. Some were hidden in the ruins of old temples, guarded by spirits who tested Ayaka's resolve. Others had been claimed by rogue yokai, twisted beings who lashed out in fear or anger. And in each place Ayaka grew stronger. She remembered lost techniques, how to summon celestial fire with just a whisper, how to bend the wind to her will, how to move like a flickering shadow. But strength came with a price. Because with each shrine the past clawed at her. She remembered the moment she ran. The moment she abandoned those who had trusted her. The moment the yokai lords marked her as prey. Hiroshi noticed. He never asked, but she could see it in his eyes, the quiet concern, the unspoken questions. She didn't answer them. Not yet.
One night, beneath a sky full of stars, Chiyo had another vision. She sat cross-legged on the ground, an open paper crane resting in her lap. The wind stirred the delicate folds and then, it moved. The pages unfurled, forming intricate shapes, a story playing out before their eyes. A woman in flowing robes standing atop a mountain. A storm raging behind her. A fox standing beside her. And then a battle. A war lost to time. A spirit bound to something beyond death. The vision ended as quickly as it had begun. Chiyo exhaled shakily. "There's something inside me." Ayaka nodded slowly. "A guardian," she murmured. "One that has been watching over you for a long time." Chiyo met her gaze. "And I think it's leading us somewhere." Ayaka glanced at the map they had spread out earlier. Only a few shrines remained. And beyond them, the yokai lords were waiting.
The yokai lords had been watching. For centuries they had ruled from the shadows, ancient, patient, unchallenged. Now the fox had surfaced once more. A mist-shrouded castle stood atop a mountain, its wooden beams twisted with age, its doors whispering with the voices of spirits long forgotten. Inside, seated upon a throne carved from the bones of Tengu warriors, the Tengu lord listened. His wings, black as a storm cloud, rustled as his sharp beak curved into something akin to a smile. "The fox runs," he mused. "But prey that runs only tires itself out." From the shadows his emissaries emerged. Hollow-eyed oni, their skin marked with ancient sigils. Spectral couriers, their forms shifting between worlds. "Find her," the Tengu lord commanded, "and remind her who owns these lands."
Ayaka felt it before she saw them. The chill in the wind. The shift in the shadows. The way the trees bent unnaturally as if bowing in fear. They had been followed. She, Hiroshi, and Chiyo had spent the past few days moving between shrines, following the paper cranes that guided them. But no matter how far they traveled, she could feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing against her back. "They're close," she murmured. Hiroshi tensed. His grip tightened on the wooden staff he had taken to carrying, knowing steel would do little against spirits. Chiyo swallowed hard. Her hands trembled as she folded another crane, hoping for guidance. The paper stirred, but before it could unfold, the night shattered. A sudden gust of wind screamed through the trees, sending leaves and dust flying. The air rippled, then the shadows themselves peeled away, forming figures with glowing eyes. The first of the Tengu Lord's hunters had arrived.
The attack was swift. Feathered demons swooped from the darkness, talons flashing like steel. Oni warriors charged, their hulking forms tearing through trees like paper. Ayaka barely had time to react. A wall of celestial fire erupted around them, shielding Hiroshi and Chiyo from the first wave. The flames snarled and twisted, licking at the yokai skin, but they did not burn like ordinary fire. This is no ordinary hunt, Ayaka realized. These creatures had been sent by someone powerful. Someone who knew exactly what she was. She gritted her teeth. They couldn't run forever. Hiroshi, she called. Her husband needed no further instruction. He grabbed Chiyo and leapt back just as an Oni's club smashed into the ground where they had stood. Chiyo gasped. The impact split the earth, sending shards of rock flying. Ayaka. But the Kitsune was already moving. She spun, her tails igniting with golden flames, and struck. A pulse of power rippled outward, a blast that sent Yokai tumbling back. The flames flickered. And then, in the heart of the firelight, Ayaka saw him. A figure standing just beyond the battle. Watching. The Tengu Lord's emissary. He was clad in dark robes, his elongated nose marking him unmistakably as one of the Tengu. His crimson eyes glowed beneath his hat, and in his hand he carried a fan, not of paper but of sharpened feathers. She fights well, he mused, but she is still afraid. The word sent ice down Ayaka's spine. He knew. She hesitates. A smirk curled his lips. She still believes she can outrun fate. Ayaka's heart pounded. He wasn't here to kill her. He was here to test her.
The fight ended in silence. The yokai didn't retreat. They simply faded. As if this had been nothing more than a message. Ayaka stood there breathing hard. The flames around her flickered and died. She had barely won. And the enemy knew it. Hiroshi placed a hand on her shoulder. She hadn't even noticed him approach. "We can't keep running," he said quietly. Chiyo clutched a half-folded paper crane. Her wide eyes reflected the fear Ayaka didn't want to acknowledge. "They're going to find us again, aren't they?" the child whispered. Ayaka closed her eyes. She had spent years avoiding this fight. She had told herself that hiding was the only way to survive. That staying in the shadows kept those she loved safe. But no. The shadows had come for her anyway. She looked toward the sky, where the last traces of the yokai's presence still lingered in the wind. "No more running. We find the last shrines," she said. "And then I stop hiding." The temple stood as it always had, silent, forgotten, waiting. Ayaka's footsteps barely disturbed the moss growing between the cracked stones of the courtyard. Wind whispered through the rotting beams, carrying the scent of old incense and rain-soaked wood. She had not been here in decades. The place where she had once trained. The place where she had made her choice. Hiroshi and Chiyo waited by the entrance, sensing that this was a path she had to walk alone. Ayaka took a breath and stepped forward.
Memories came in fragments. A fox cub, barely old enough to take human form, struggling against a masked figure. The scent of scorched earth. The crack of a wooden staff against her ribs. Again, the voice had commanded. Ayaka blinked, staring at the overgrown training grounds. The past and present blurred. She could still feel the sting of that staff. The frustration. The endless failures. "You seek power, but power seeks balance," her master had once told her. Without balance, even the brightest flames burn to nothing. She had not understood then. She wondered if she did now.
The shrine doors groaned as Ayaka pushed them open. Inside, dust blanketed the altar where offerings had once been placed. The candles were long dead, their wax frozen in time. She traced a clawed fingertip over the wood, remembering the prayers whispered here. A flicker of movement caught her eye. A spectral figure stood in the shadows near the far wall, its form wavering like candlelight in the wind. "You have returned, little fox." The voice sent a shiver down her spine. Her master, or at least what remained of him.
The figure stepped forward, revealing an aged man draped in the tattered robes of a shrine priest. His mask, once an emblem of wisdom, was cracked, revealing hollowed-out eyes. "I had thought you would never return." Ayaka swallowed. She had not expected him to linger in this place. "I left because I had no choice," she said quietly. The specter tilted its head. The mask grinned without humor. "No choice?" the voice echoed. "You had every choice. And you chose fear." Ayaka's hands clenched. "I chose survival." Pause. Then the specter chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. Survival? Or avoidance? Ayaka's tails bristled. She had not come here for riddles. I need power, she said, stepping forward. I need to finish this. The specter watched her. The temple felt heavier, the air thickening as if the past itself were pressing against her. Do you remember why I forbade you from reaching for too much? The specter asked. Ayaka's breath hitched. She remembered. She had once burned so brightly, so fiercely, that she had almost consumed herself. Power had come at a price. And the price had been everything. Her clan. Her name. Her place in this world. She had traded it all just to survive. And now here she was about to do it again.
If you take this path, you will no longer be who you were. The specter's voice was softer now. Are you willing to pay that price? Ayaka hesitated. Then she closed her eyes. She had already lost so much. If she turned back now, what was left to protect? I am ready, she whispered. The specter exhaled, a sigh that rustled through the ruined shrine like a dying wind. Then take what remains. The temple pulsed. A hidden power, long buried beneath the weight of time, surged toward her. Flames curled around Ayaka's fingertips, brighter than ever before. But in their light she saw something else. A glimpse of the future. A battlefield soaked in moonlight. The laughter of a demon. A voice, Hiroshi's voice, crying out in pain. And then darkness. Ayaka gasped, stumbling back as the vision faded. The specter was gone. Only his final words remained, echoing in the silence. Power is a blade. Wield it too recklessly and it will cut those you love the deepest.
The wind carried the scent of thunder and earth. Perched atop a jagged mountain, the last shrine stood, untouched by time yet weighed down by it. Carved from black stone, its gates loomed like the fangs of some slumbering beast. The ancient kanji etched into its surface had long eroded, but the power within still pulsed, waiting. Ayaka, Hiroshi, and Chiyo stood before it, their breath visible in the frigid air. This is it, Ayaka murmured. The final step. The power that could change everything. Yet, as the doors creaked open, the shrine refused to surrender its secrets so easily. Something else had been waiting too.
The ground shuddered. A deep, guttural growl echoed through the temple walls, shaking loose fragments of stone. From the darkness beyond the shrine's threshold, a colossal form stirred. A creature older than the mountain itself. For crimson eyes flickered open, their glow piercing the shadows. Clawed hands, large enough to crush boulders, dragged its massive body forward. A mane of twisted branches and bones curled around its shoulders like a crown of suffering. You have come for power. The voice rumbled through the chamber as if the mountain itself had spoken. But power demands a price. The guardian of the shrine had awakened. A cursed yokai once divine, now imprisoned within its own duty. Ayaka felt the weight of its sorrow, the remnants of the celestial being it had once been. Yet there was no hesitation in its movements as it lunged. It had no choice but to test them.
Hiroshi moved first. His body reacted before his mind could catch up, stepping between Ayaka and the beast's descending claws. The charm Ayaka had given him flared, but it was not just her blessing that protected him. Ayaka's eyes widened. A faint glow surrounded Hiroshi, something far older than her magic. Something within him stirred. Hiroshi, she called, realization dawning too late. The yokai's claw slammed down, but instead of crushing him, the air around Hiroshi cracked like shattered glass. A pulse of energy, ancient, unyielding, surged outward. The beast recoiled. Not in pain but in recognition. You. The yokai rumbled, its voice shifting. Less rage. More reverence. Ayaka looked at Hiroshi, who was breathing hard, staring at his own hands. The lingering glow faded, but the air around him still buzzed with unseen power. What was that? Hiroshi whispered. Ayaka clenched her jaw. She had spent years protecting him, believing he was just an ordinary man who had happened to love a kitsune. But something inside him had just answered a celestial being. And the shrine guardian knew it.
Enough, the yokai murmured. It rose back to its full height, but the aggression in its stance faded. The shrine walls trembled as its curse weakened, as if Hiroshi's presence alone had begun to unravel it. Then the air shifted again. Chiyo gasped. Her paper crane fluttered wildly in her hands before bursting into golden light. From the glow a figure emerged. Not a child's spirit, not an omen, but something greater. Chiyo fell to her knees as the being fully manifested. A celestial presence draped in light, its form both familiar and unknowable. It has been a long time, it said. Ayaka knew that voice. It was the voice that had whispered through Chiyo's origami, the presence that had guided them all along. But now it stood before them in full. A spirit, once a guardian of the celestial realm, now seeking redemption. And it had chosen Chiyo.
The shrine guardian exhaled, its ancient curse fraying like worn silk. It is done, it said. It had tested them. And they had passed. Ayaka turned to Hiroshi, searching for answers he did not yet have. Whatever power had awakened in him, it was just beginning to reveal itself. Chiyo, eyes wide, touched the spirit that had been bound to her for so long. "Who are you?" she whispered. The celestial being smiled. "A mistake once made. A guardian once fallen. But now, a guide once more." The final temple had given them more than power. It had given them the truth. And truths had consequences. The battlefield burned with celestial fire and darkness intertwined. The yokai lords lay defeated, but the sky did not clear. Instead, the darkness thickened. The shrine trembled, the wind stilled. And then, it spoke. "You have fought well, Ayaka." The voice did not belong to the Tengu lord, nor the Onmyoji of the dead. It was deeper, older, woven into the very air. A presence loomed above them beyond the physical. A god. Ayaka's breath caught in her throat. She had expected the yokai lords to be the true threat. She had been wrong. Did you truly think you were hunted by mere yokai? The entity's voice slithered through the shrine, pressing against her bones. They were my emissaries. My servants. Slowly, a figure began to take shape. It was not a beast nor a man. It was shifting, formless, draped in divine energy long since tainted. Long ago, you defied the gods themselves. And now, little fox, your time has run out.
Ayaka's celestial flames roared to life, golden and wild. Hiroshi unsheathed a blade, its edge glowing with protective charms. Chiyo stood firm, her origami cranes flitting around her, a spirit's presence growing stronger within her. Together, Ayaka commanded. They attacked. Golden fire, enchanted steel, paper imbued with ancient spirits. Three forces striking as one. The god did not move. The moment their attacks made contact, they vanished. Not burned. Not deflected. Swallowed by the void. The god's formless shape convulsed, flickering between shadows and celestial light. It was absorbing their power. Ayaka staggered back. The being laughed. This is why I sought you, Ayaka. Your celestial fire is the only thing that can burn beyond the mortal and the divine. It is the only force strong enough to reduce both the physical and the spiritual to ash. And from that ash, I shall remake the world in my image. Ayaka froze. This was never about vengeance. Never about her past sins. He wanted her power to destroy everything.
She clenched her fists. They had nothing that could harm him. Their strongest attacks had been nothing more than kindling for his abyss. And yet, he needed her. He could not burn the world without her fire. Ayaka's tails flickered like dying embers. She understood now. She couldn't kill him. But she could take away the one thing he needed. Herself. She looked to Hiroshi and Chiyo. Run. Hiroshi's breath hitched. No. This isn't up for debate. We fight together. Chiyo pleaded. Ayaka smiled, a fox's sly, bittersweet grin. You already have. Now let me end it. The god lunged, but Ayaka didn't dodge. She rushed forward. For the first time in centuries, she did not hold back. The world ignited.
Ayaka let loose everything. The celestial flames that had been sealed deep inside her. The power she had trained for lifetimes to control. She burned. And in doing so, she became the fire itself. The god screamed. Not in rage. Not in pain. But in fear. No, this is not what I willed. The fire did not burn the world. It burned only him. Not just his form. Not just his presence. His very existence. The god who sought to reshape reality was erased. And when the flames faded, so was Ayaka.
The battlefield lay in ruin. The corrupted god's presence had vanished. The sky cleared. The wind returned. But Ayaka, she was nowhere. Hiroshi fell to his knees, his hands grasping at empty air. No. Chiyo stood frozen, origami cranes fluttering around her as if searching for something that was no longer there. And then, a single paper crane landed in Hiroshi's palm. Its wings trembled as if whispering. It held no vision, only a farewell.